What is the SNAC program in boxing, and why is it seen by many as a controversial thing? It's used by elite world champions like Terence Crawford, Devin Haney, and in the women's game, Clarissa Shields, and with not one of these athletes ever having failed a doping test. Why does the word SNAC always come up when people accuse these fighters of these things? In this video, I'm going to be breaking down for you what the SNAC program is, why it has ties to controversial happenings, and whether or not a program that is deeply involved in modern day boxing might be an issue for the sport. Now guys, just before this video begins, I'm actually filming this after I'd made the vast majority of this video. But something has happened in the last week or so that I've just found out about. And so I've had to come back to this one, make a bit more to add to this, because this is actually a bit of a twist and this actually significantly changes things. There's some stuff going on right now with Devin Haney and Brian Norman that I will get into later in this video, but it's absolutely relevant to all of this. And Victor Conte has even made an admission that, to be honest, in my mind, blows all of this wide open and seriously adds to the questions that people will be asking about whether or not SNAC is legitimate. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. I hope you're all having an absolutely tremendous week. I'm about to head back to the UK for a month or so, which I'm very excited about. But before I fly, I've been meaning to make this video for a while. It's been something I've wanted to talk about because I recently did a video about Terence Crawford, looking at what I believe his actual weight to be and what I think the weight discrepancy between him and Canelo will be when they actually get into the ring in September. And in making this video, I was getting a lot of comments from people. Crawford's part of the SNAC program, and there was a lot of allegations from people that that meant he's a cheater, that there's things in his system that shouldn't be there. Now, I just want to make it very clear at the start of this video that I'm not alleging that any of these boxers are using performance-enhancing drugs, are cheating in any way, shape, or form, or that the SNAC program itself is doing any of these things. But there are people that say these things, and so I want to, in this video, take a deep dive into why that is. Because to be honest with you, I didn't actually know what SNAC was. It's the kind of the side of the game that I haven't really paid much attention to in the past, but people kept saying Crawford's a SNAC fighter, Haney's a SNAC fighter. It's something I'd heard quite a bit. I'd never actually taken the time to sit down and figure out what that meant. So that's what I'm going to be doing for you in this video before giving you my opinion on the program. Don't forget to bang a like on the video if indeed you do like it. Don't forget to subscribe to A Guy Called Henry if you're new, or if you're someone who's been watching a while and haven't hit the subscribe button yet. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. And get your comments in the comment section below. What do you think about the SNAC program? So to begin, there's two concepts we've got to sort of introduce here, two programs, I suppose, and one man who is behind all of this. So the SNAC program, which stands for the Scientific Nutrition of Advanced Conditioning, is a sports and nutrition and conditioning program which was founded by a man called Victor Conte.
It's Victor Conte here.
It's me again, Demetrius Andrade.
So guys, your boy Mikey Garcia.
I'm Devin the Dream Haney.
If you're ready to take your fight game to the next level,
If you're looking to take your fight game to the next level,
If you want to take your training to that next level,
If you want to take your game to the next level,
fight a stack. Everything you need.
It says here that it provides legal supplements and training routines aimed at boosting athletes' strength, endurance, and recovery. And when you look at some of the athletes they're working with, it certainly seems to be doing the job. The likes of Crawford and Haney, who I mentioned in the introduction, are both athletes on this program, and both athletes who are tremendous athletes. I don't know how else to put it. They're both super fit. They always have their conditioning on point when they go into the ring. And it says here, the program uses science-driven methods, for example, hypoxic altitude training chambers and specialized supplement stacks, to improve athletic performance. The facility includes advanced equipment to simulate high-altitude conditions, reflecting SNAC's focus on innovative conditioning techniques. And all this sounds great. All this sounds innovative and exciting. And as an athlete, it sounds like something that you'd want to be a part of if you got the opportunity. So why are there problems with this program? Why do people always bring it up alongside accusations, or often bring it up alongside accusations of cheating, of use of performance-enhancing drugs? Well, it's all because of another program. And it was called the BALCO program, or the BALCO scandal as it's now known. So this guy, Victor Conte, became famous because of this BALCO program.
my name is Victor Conte, and I was the mastermind behind the distribution of designer steroids in the Olympics and other international competitions. I know because I was on the dark side for 4 years. Circumventing the testing was like taking candy from a baby.
Through BALCO Labs, he developed undetectable steroids and supplied performance-enhancing drugs to numerous star athletes. High-profile clients included MLB slugger Barry Bonds, Olympic sprinter Marion Jones, and boxer Shane Mosley, among others. Dwayne Chambers. The list goes on and on. You might also recognize the names Jason and Jeremy Giambi, who were mentioned and that were played in the movie Moneyball, which I actually watched yesterday, weirdly enough. A couple of football players in there as well, and there was an MMA athlete. Basically, a pretty wide range of sports. So what happened? Well, Conte basically admitted to distributing these steroids.
Then I started giving it to athletes, what became known as the clear at the time, which was simply an undetectable designer steroid.
This was back in 2005, and he served 4 months in a federal prison and another 4 months on house arrest. And of course, such a scandal messed up the careers of many athletes, tarnished, I should say. They messed it up themselves by taking performance-enhancing drugs, but it definitely tarnished their reputation, ruined their careers. And Conte very much was seen as a symbol of sports doping in that era. So when I tell you that Conte is the man behind the SNAC program, you might start to understand why people level these accusations at the SNAC program and the athletes that are involved in it. And all of this is actually really reminding me of a movie that some of you may have seen, a documentary that's on Netflix called Icarus. And I remember seeing it several years ago, and I thought it was absolutely incredible. It was by an American documentary maker called Brian Fogel, who basically sets off on a journey to try and dope, to work with this Russian doctor and try and dope in the field of cycling and see how much he can actually improve. And he works with this guy called Grigory Rodchenkov, who actually at the time, I think he was the director of the Russian Olympic program. Excuse me, he was the director of the Moscow Anti-Doping Laboratory. And Rodchenkov basically develops this program for him so he can go and do his mission for this documentary. At the same time, there's all these allegations breaking that Rodchenkov is basically doing state-sponsored doping. And that's what's happening, is he's helping the athletes to beat these doping tests rather than it being an actual anti-doping lab. It's doing quite the opposite. And Rodchenkov decides to become a whistleblower, and they get him to America, they get him there safe, and he blows the whistle on this program. He explains how there's been this systematic approach by Russia to beating these performance-enhancing drugs tests. And similarly with Victor Conte, he takes on this sort of reformed mantle, this approach to life after his prosecution as an anti-doping advocate.
Boxer Shane Mosley, how did you both begin working together?
It became about other undetectable substances and so on. We talked about some of the substances and methods that could be available to him. PEDs make you much better.
But do they make you? They make you physically
your reaction
better, but
time's
not
faster. Your recovery is better. You're stronger. Your punching power is up. Your punch resistance is up. PEDs help you be a much better fighter.
And he starts contributing to WADA, the World Anti-Doping Association, and gives them recommendations on how they can stop cheating by showing them the latest stuff, how people have been beating these performance-enhancing drug tests. And so post the scandal, Conte is very much putting forward this image of, I'm squeaky clean now, and actually, I'm against doping, I'm not for doping. So after this, he transitions from the BALCO, the tainted, the dark sort of evil BALCO program, to the new modern era with SNAC, which is supposed to be its if BALCO is the evil twin, SNAC's the good twin, and it's supposed to be this program that provides legal supplementation, all these things that will enhance performance, but in a legal way that, that isn't going to fail any anti-doping protocols. And he actually actively enrolls his fighters, encourages his fighters to be enrolled in the VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association, to prove that these are clean athletes. And I guess that's something you'd kind of have to do, right? Because not only is he going to be accused of continuing his old ways, but so are the modern day athletes that are with SNAC. And look, it's one of those things where you can understand why people are never ever going to trust Conte again. And you'd argue that he shouldn't be anywhere near the sport or sport in general because of his checkered past. And this is kind of at the core of what the agenda or the allegations against SNAC are, why they get leveled at SNAC is because, one, we're in a sport like boxing where fighters are failing performance-enhancing drugs tests constantly. And actually, there's been whistleblowers in the past who have come out and talked about how rife they believe PEDs to be in boxing.
This is a difficult one, I appreciate, so don't have to answer if you don't want to. How many of the top boxers, percentage-wise now, do you think might be doing PEDs?
Top boxers.
Yeah. So world level and above.
Let's call them pay-per-view type standard.
Yeah.
80 to 90%.
And look, it's something that we've seen as well. There's certain gyms that seem to keep producing athletes that are failing tests. The current example that's been in the media a lot is Eddie Reynoso's gym, who trains Canelo Alvarez, of course, and the amount of failed PED tests that have come out of that gym. And with Crawford fighting Canelo, we will be looking at that gym in a bit more detail before the end of this video. But certainly questions have to be asked, questions have to be raised, and more needs to be done for the anti-doping associations to stay ahead of the curve in boxing. And it's that concept of staying ahead of the curve that I believe is the issue with SNAC. Because the reality is that we're never actually going to know whether or not it's a clean program. until someone fails a test, which hopefully will never happen because, as I understand it, it is a clean program and all of this is all alleged, of course. But the thing is, BALCO athletes were clean until they weren't. And I think that's the assumption with SNAC athletes that people believe is that they're clean until they're not. I.e., if they're ahead of the curve, they're not going to get caught. And right now, not a single SNAC athlete has failed a test. And there's only two options here. Either they're so good that they're not detecting any substances that shouldn't be in their systems, or they indeed actually are clean athletes. I'm going to go with the latter for now because I think you have to say innocent until proven guilty. I'm from the UK after all. But yeah, if the person behind your organization is sort of the godfather of undetectable steroids, you can understand why there's forever going to be a shadow looming over anything you do as an athlete that's in the SNAC program. Literally, I don't think there's anything they can do to dispel those allegations. They're just always going to be there at this point. And just to take you through what the closest they've been to failing a test would be, there's never been anyone failing a test. As I've said, I reiterate that again. But there have been fighters that have been involved with SNAC at points in their careers who have then failed tests either before or afterwards. The first one I'll talk about is Amir Khan. He had been with SNAC in the past and he tested positive for a banned Sam Osterine after his February 2022 fight against Kell Brook. He was handed a 2-year ban, but at this point, Khan's finished his career, so it doesn't really mean much to him. And by the way, Khan got absolutely battered in that fight, so clearly the Osterine didn't help him too much. And again, there was no SNAC involvement in this period of Khan's career. Andre Berto in 2012, he'd worked with Conte's team going into 2011. He failed the test in mid-2012 for nandrolone, which is an anabolic steroid. And Conte made it very clear that Berto had left SNAC's camp by then and likely took some contaminated supplement on his own. And to be clear, Berto's earlier VADA tests while on the SNAC protocols were clean. I suppose the thing with some of these failed tests is that it's happened after they've been in the SNAC program, and so one logical explanation could be that they were actually cheating while they were with SNAC, but they were doing these protocols and things that meant that they weren't going to get detected, and then perhaps they don't want to be a part of the SNAC program anymore. I assume it costs some money to be in that, and they think they can do it by themselves. This, of course, is all hypothetical. I don't think that's what's happened, but you can understand how some people could read into that situation and say that that's the situation. The second you leave the program, suddenly you get exposed. I don't think that's what it is. I think that these guys just happen to be using other things once they're out of SNAC. And let's be realistic as well. It's not like SNAC fighters are always winning. You know, Devin Haney got absolutely battered by Ryan Garcia, who ironically did fail a drugs test. Caleb Plant's not been on a great run of form lately. Demetrius Andrade got beaten by David Benavidez, although Benavidez is just so much bigger. I don't think any amount of legal or illegal supplements would have helped him in that one. I think the main thing here to say is that the only thing that we have hard evidence on is the fact that Conte has been involved in BALCO in that PED program in the past, where factually athletes were cheating the system, were taking performance-enhancing drugs and failing tests. Today, the only suspicious thing about SNAC athletes is that Victor Conte is part of that process. Other than that, there is nothing to say that any of these people are cheating. There's nothing to say that SNAC isn't exactly what it says it is, which is this sort of legal organization that is optimizing athlete performance with supplements and, you know, the best-in-class sort of endurance testing and training. And look, I totally get it. Some people are never ever going to trust Conte again, and arguably rightly so. And the nature of boxing is that everybody sort of thinks there's a drug problem. I don't think anybody thinks there's not a drug problem in boxing. And so when you talk about SNAC, you're essentially asking us to believe that this is the gold standard, that this is the clean boxing world that we all want these athletes to exist in. Which brings us back to the main point of what I'm saying here. It's either one or the other. Either they're so good that no one's failing tests, or actually they are legitimate, they are producing clean athletes. Okay, so this is where I'm going to jump in, because it's this issue, this core issue here, of whether or not this is a program that produces clean athletes or whether they're just ahead of the curve, that is central to this video. It's the whole point of this video, right? Well, right now, there is a situation occurring with Brian Norman and Devin Haney, who, of course, are scheduled to fight later this year. Now, apparently, Devin Haney is demanding that Brian Norman does a longer than usual testing period for this fight. They're sort of insinuating and implying that Brian Norman might be a drugs cheat, and because they're so clean, they want the most elite and disciplined and strict testing possible. They're promoting this sort of 365 testing where, you know, you're constantly being tested by VADA, the Volunteer Anti-Doping Association, who we mentioned earlier, who Conte, of course, likes all his athletes to enroll with. Now, this on the surface seems like a really fair thing to do, a really great thing to do. But then I saw a video this week, an interview with Brian Norman that was highlighting this issue where something very interesting was said.
Victor Conte with the VADA stuff, right?
Yes. We were talking about it.
Devin Haney with the Victor Conte, right?
Yeah. That's all that need to be said about that.
So how is it any other testing organization we can somehow get into? Because I don't know if I can even trust them.
Right.
That's how I feel about it.
Right.
They click tight, but they go way back since kindergarten. I don't know I can trust y'all like that. You feel me?
Ryan, I once asked, I mentioned this Friday when we had the live. I once asked Victor, I said, do you know how to beat the VADA test since you
And he said yes.
Yes, he did.
So there you can hear it. The journalist Sean Zittel saying that Conte has told him before that he actually knows how to beat these VADA drug tests.
I've spoken to some championship fighters you work, and they said, off the record, I've talked with Victor, and he says, we do all we can to help VADA make the test stringent, especially, in helping form it. But he said, Victor at the same time did admit he knows how to beat these tests as good as they are. What percentage of championship level notable fighters, what kind of estimate do you think are beating the system, are getting past VADA, WADA, USADA, any of them?
Is it possible to circumvent? Yeah, it is. But the same people that know how to circumvent, like myself, are the same ones that know how to catch it.
The issue is...
And that quote really does put things into perspective. That really does blow things wide open, because if Conte's saying that there's people out there and he's one of them that know how to beat VADA testing, what's to say that's not exactly what they're doing? We don't know, of course, and I'm not accusing them of doing this. I'm just saying, how do we know that they're not? That's what I'm asking. That's the question I'm asking. Now, this admission mixed with this quote from Conte earlier in his life.
And of course I knew I was breaking the law, but I also knew that these crimes were very soft. So in my thinking, it was, okay, if something happens, then do the crime, serve the time.
Raises serious questions because Conte has basically said here, yeah, I knew it was illegal, but he doesn't say he thought it was wrong necessarily. And he said that he did it because he knew that the consequences, it was a relatively minor crime. The consequences essentially weren't going to be too bad. It was a risk worth taking. And I just wonder if he's actually changed his mind on that. It's so weird that all this has happened while I'm making this video because I've not actually heard that much about Conte for quite a while. But now there's serious questions being raised about his understanding of VADA, his relationship with VADA. I don't know anything about this. This is just what people are speculating online. Does Conte have some kind of relationship with VADA? He says it's purely that we asked them to do the testing. It's no further than that. But the concern now from some fans is that Devin Haney, for example, as one example of this, as someone who's in the SNAC program, is demanding this rigorous testing regime for something that the guy he's working with in the SNAC program knows how to beat. So is this a fair and level playing field? We actually have no idea. But now I'm going to jump back into the main video because there's some stuff about Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Reynoso that we need to talk about. There really is no end to all of this. So can boxing ever fully trust Victor Conte and SNAC? Well, get in the comment section below and let me know what you think. I'll leave it for you to decide. But the whole reason this actually came up in the first place was because of what people were accusing Terence Crawford of as part of being in this SNAC program, of essentially being a cheat, of somebody who is being a bit of a weight bully, has been making weight all these years thanks to, methods that shouldn't be permitted, as someone that will come into this fight, working his way up, making himself a bigger man in ways, again, that shouldn't be allowed. That's what people are accusing him of because of his involvement in SNAC. When the reality is it's Canelo who is part of Camp Reynoso, where tests actually are coming back failed. Now, Camp Reynoso obviously refute this. They say that they now need to take a more hands-on approach to their fighters' nutrition programs because they're saying it's nothing to do with them that fighters have been failing performance-enhancing drugs tests. But the problem is the link coming out of Reynoso's gym is so extensive now that it's really hard to ignore it. I mean, I'll take you through it right now. So the biggest one that you'll all remember was when Canelo failed that test for clenbuterol, hence the nickname Canelo, back in February 2018. It was around the time of the rematch with Golovkin, I believe. Now, they came up with the reason and excuse for this, which was contaminated beef. That was how they explained it, but Canelo still received a 6-month suspension. The next, I'd say, that was most significant was Oscar Valdez in August 2021. He tested positive for something called phentermine, which is a central nervous system stimulant and appetite suppressant. The next was Julio Cesare Martinez, who was the former WBC flyweight champion. He's failed multiple drug tests. In 2019, Martinez tested positive for clenbuterol, the same drug that Canelo failed for, but was absolved by the WBC, which accepted contaminated meat as a probable cause and issued no punishment. And Martinez recently popped again ahead of his March 2024 fight, which was for 3 banned substances, diuretics and masking agents used to dilute or hide PED use. He got suspended for 9 months, which was a retroactive ban. And to be fair to Reynoso, the next one, most recent, was Jaime Munguia, which is obviously frustrating. Oh, and then, of course, there was also Francisco Rodriguez, who battered Galalia fine. Then he also failed a drugs test. Although Reynoso has actually refuted that he was part of his camp, he's just saying that he was sponsored by or he wore the no boxing, no life gear. I don't know if he actually had any involvement in his training camp. And there's been a few more actually that have been linked with him, like Ryan Garcia, for example, Lewis Neary. When these guys failed tests, they had been involved in the camp at some point, but apparently they weren't at the time when they failed these tests or had these fights. But it's a whole lot of noise. It's a whole lot of affiliation, even if they weren't directly involved with Reynoso's camp when they technically failed the tests. But my point is this. Going into this fight, if anybody should be being looked at, it's that side of things. You know, SNAC haven't failed any tests, and I know that Victor Conte is a proven cheat in a court of law, but how many people in boxing would be failed cheats in a court of law if they went through that process the way that Conte did? There might be quite a few more than you think. The reality is I don't know if you should ever trust Victor Conte again. I don't know if you can afford that because it's such a bad thing. Once someone's, be proven to be a cheat once, I don't know if they should get a second chance in the sport. The athletes tend to not get one. They get a few years ban or whatever. Some athletes get banned for a long time and lose their best years. I do think for some of these guys working behind the scenes, they should be treated similarly. They're just as culpable and they facilitate so much more cheating. It's similar to, drug use in real life. A drug dealer is going to be doing much more damage than a drug user. It's just a fact. But all this to say is that I find it interesting. I find it curious that people bring up SNAC so often when, as I say, no one's failed a test. And yet we have Reynoso's situation, which is getting scrutiny, is getting noise now. And everything I've stated is factual. I'm not speculating anything. I'm not giving you anything I believe to be my opinion, or I'm not making up anything. This is all fact and then things that have been alleged by people in the public, sphere. Long story short, I guess time will tell with SNAC, but until proven otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, Terence Crawford is a clean athlete. And as I said before, innocent until proven guilty is always the way where I come from. But guys, let me know what you all think about this. Get your comments in the comment section below. I hope you've all enjoyed this video. I cannot wait for Crawford against Canelo. I'm going to be doing lots of videos in the build-up to it. We've got Itama White coming up in a few weeks as well, which I'm very excited about. So keep your eyes open for all the stuff coming on the channel. And as I always say, on to the next one.